Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yeah, so everybody went to bed last night and got up today thinking the Senate committee is going to vote at 9:30. Vote the nomination out to the full Senate. Then we heard that Senator Flake decided to vote for Kavanaugh. That made it a done deal, 11-10. And then we find out the vote's not going to be till 1:30. And it's clear, and everybody on the committee wanted the biggest audience possible for it, so they waited to do it during my show.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday!
And we are more than happy to accommodate them here, folks. If they want to conduct the vote after 4 hours of speechifying, the Democrats said, we still want to complain about the FBI some more. And that Kavanaugh's a sloppy fall-down drunk, and I want to show pictures of his calendar. And I want to... And so Grassley said, well, okay. And so the vote's going to be at 1:30. After a bunch of speechifying here. Greetings and welcome, Rush Limbaugh at 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. And it is Open Line Friday, so if you're tired of all of this and want to talk about something else, you can. That's what Open Line Friday is about. Well, Snurdly shaking his head in there. Are you protesting to have... Let me tell you something. There's a lot of stories out there that have nothing to do with this. Do you know that the iPhone is now a misogynist device? The iPhone 10s Max is said to be anti-woman because it's too big. I'm not making this up. There are feminist groups disguised as Apple customers complaining that the big iPhone, even though there's all kinds of different sizes, the big iPhone is too big, it's discriminatory because it doesn't fit women's hands. Yeah, of course you can find it in your purse easier and you can see it better. I mean, here's it. I've never heard of women complaining about something that they hold in their hand being too big, but they're doing it about this. That's my whole point. That news is out there. I've been holding that news. Anyway, I'm just saying, if all of this has you frustrated and bored, and you want to bring something else up, you can. That's what Open Line Friday is all about. I don't expect much of that, but if you want to, you can. In getting started, I want to go back to the very end of the program yesterday, and I want to replay something I said. Rather than just tell you I said it, I want to go back to the program archives from yesterday. I want to play it. I got an email note from a journalist friend of mine. Actually, more than one, but at the time I got this one. It frosted me. Emailed very quickly. Well, tell me what you think privately. I think he's toast. I think he's toast. And internally, I just exploded. That kind of fatalism and defeatism is what I hate about politics. Kavanaugh had not testified yet. All we had was Ballsy Ford and her testimony and the Democrats' reaction to it, and there were already people willing to give up. I think he's toast. And I'd heard it throughout the day. Even before Ballsy Ford's testimony, I'd heard Kavanaugh's toast. And it just made me livid. It's not that I can't relate to it. Everybody can relate to fatalism, defeatism, and that kind of thing if you get depressed about certain circumstances and how they're unfolding. But this, to me, was no time to give up, and it's certainly no time to lose faith in Kavanaugh. And so this is pretty much how the program ended, and therefore many of you may not have heard it, so I want to replay it. I just got an email from a guy, a journalist friend. I think Kavanaugh's toast. Don't you? I wrote back, no. I do not think Kavanaugh's toast. We didn't learn anything new. We still don't know what, when, where, why. The people involved that she named all deny it in a sworn affidavit. Brett Kavanaugh can deny all of this with far more certitude than she can assert it. Not knowing where or when supposedly makes it tough for Kavanaugh to deny it, because how do you say you were never at a place that she isn't even able to name? You watch. If this were me, under all these allegations. I would be livid at this. I'd be livid that anybody believed it, given this many holes and given this lack of corroboration, this lack of evidence. I don't know where it happened. I don't know how I got home. I don't know when it was. I don't know what I told people afterwards. I've got a bunch of Democrat lawyers offering their services to me for free. We got the Democrat Party running this operation. It's a shame that the Republican prosecutor didn't pull that off. That's what she was trying to do. That didn't work. Now it's up to Kavanaugh. And it's up to what 2 or 3 Republican senators think. And I definitely believe he can beat this back. I don't have any doubt that he can. Whether he will, this pressure-packed moment, but I think he can. Against this, Rush, it'd be a lot easier if she had named a place because he could prove it. He can already prove he wasn't in a general neighborhood with his calendars. Well, that didn't prove Rush. She didn't have any either. It was the whole point. Do you think Kavanaugh should cry? No. Some people do. Ladies and gentlemen, despite all, he can beat this back. I firmly believe. I don't think anything's over yet. I'm not one of these people. I used to fall prey to my initial reactions of what I thought and felt after seeing something on TV. But I'm older and wiser and far more suspicious. And I live in a current set of beliefs that the American people are wiser than normal over what they see on television. I could be dead wrong about that, but I've got faith. That is why, if I may say so, that is why people listen to this program. Because when this program was over yesterday, there were a lot of people who thought Kavanaugh was toast. Intelligent, learned, experienced in following these kinds of things thought he was toast. Everywhere in the drive-by media, they were pre-celebrating Kavanaugh is toast. And I didn't see it at all. I didn't, and I knew that Kavanaugh could come back from this, so I simply said so. And what did we get when Kavanaugh sat down?
This has destroyed my family and my good name. A good name built up through decades of very hard work and public service at the highest levels of the American government. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. The consequences will be with us for decades.
He unloaded on them. I don't know what people thought he wasn't going to be able to or was not going to think it was the right thing to do, but he unloaded on them. And he happened to nail it right there. He told the world exactly what he was up against and what was going on. The Senate Republicans decided not to vote on Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland. They just didn't vote on him for a year, using the Biden rule that we don't vote on nominees made by lame duck presidents in the last year of their presidency. We didn't try to destroy Merrick Garland. There was not an effort to ruin his life, his family, his reputation, his career, or his record. They just didn't vote on the guy. Contrast that to the way the Democrat Party has treated Brett Kavanaugh. They decided to ruin a man's life. They are still trying to do it today. They're going to keep trying until the full Senate vote is over, and they're not going to stop then. The stakes are simply too high for them. So I knew that Kavanaugh could come out roaring and that this wasn't over. Here's one more example of Kavanaugh from yesterday.
I'm not questioning that Dr. Ford may have been sexually assaulted by some person in some place at some time. But I have never done this to her or to anyone. That's not who I am. It is not who I was. I am innocent of this charge. I intend no ill will to Dr. Ford and her family. The other night, Ashley and my daughter Liza said their prayers, and little Liza, all of 10 years old, said to Ashley, we should pray for the woman. It's a lot of wisdom from a 10-year-old.
Totally strange words for many Democrats on the committee. Pray? What's... Oh, you mean a Christian thing? That's another reason we hate the guy. But that's who he is, and that's what he said. And go back to the opening words of my comments replayed from yesterday. We still, at the end of the day yesterday, by the way, one of the things I think that was determinant in shifting some votes, Rachel Mitchell, who was the female prosecutor from Arizona hired by the Republicans, met with the Republicans, a caucus, the Senate caucus last night, Republican caucus, and she told them, as a sex crime prosecutor, she didn't hear a single thing that could even lead to a search warrant. And that's where Lindsey Graham got the line. It's a great line. It's not even enough to get a search warrant. There's not even enough to do any kind of an exam. She doesn't remember where or when specifically. And how is Kavanaugh, how's anybody supposed to prove something where he can't even be told where he supposedly was, when he supposedly was? And yet that was the test. I have had so many people ask me in emails since last night and in the run-up to today's show, Rush, what is all of this with the Democrats and the FBI? Look, if you're frustrated by that, I join you, and I welcome you to the club. Simple fact of the matter is, Dianne Feinstein had this letter from Ballsy Ford. It's either July 9th or July 30th, but sometime in July, she got that letter. They sat on that letter, and I'm not even going to talk about who leaked it. We'll get to that in a minute. She sat on that letter. She interviewed Kavanaugh personally in her orifice after having received that letter and never asked him a thing about it. She told all of her buddies on the committee about the letter, but she did not do anything with it. They didn't call the FBI. They didn't use Senate investigators. They didn't pursue anything in Ballsy Ford's letter. Do you wonder why? I'll tell you why. Because to them, it was too sketchy. To them, it didn't have enough substance. It was not enough by itself to put in the mix of things they were going to use to try to destroy Kavanaugh in phase one of the destruction. They set it aside. It became the Hail Mary tactic. They kept it in reserve in case everything else failed. They throw it out there. They engineer it being leaked. By the way, they're talking about the leak as some sinister violation of secrecy and protocol. No. They wanted it leaked. Whoever wanted it leaked. There's only certain people that saw this thing. Di-Fi and her staff, Anna Eshoo, Ballsy Ford's congresswoman, and her lawyers. Her lawyers are denying that it leaked. The Internet, The Intercept, which is the website that first got it, says they did not get it from Di-Fi or her staff. Somebody wanted it leaked. Somebody wanted it out there. The Democrats didn't want to put their name to it because they were going to violate her privacy and secrecy, which she didn't want. This was used in ways that supposedly Christine Ballsy Ford did not want it used. They could have called the FBI in July. They could have called Ballsy Ford. They could have called Kavanaugh in. They could have called all of these witnesses, Mark Judge and everybody else. They could have called in Kaiser, who was the best friend of Ballsy Ford. They could have done anything they wanted. They had the letter, and they could have gotten the committee to investigate. They didn't. And so now on the last day where Kavanaugh and Ford are testifying, they throw out this FBI thing as though they have been denied a legitimate investigation because Kavanaugh won't okay it, because Grassley won't okay it. And despite Grassley and every Republican refuting this whole FBI thing, they keep pounding on it because their audience is Democrat voters who they're trying to rile up for the midterms. This is a voter get-out procedure or get-out-the-vote procedure, and it has, there's an ancillary hope that it might still derail a vote. But there's Dick Durbin sitting there talking to Kavanaugh. When you point, just take a look at Don McGahn, Trump's lawyer in there. You tell him you want an FBI investigation. It was nothing, folks. It's a delay tactic is all it is. The Republicans have correctly identified and called all of these Democrats out on it. Then they know they're not going to get an FBI investigation. In fact, if Kavanaugh had said, okay, fine, let's get the FBI, they would have been caught short. They don't expect this. It's a pipe dream. They know they've had the chance to do this and get it. They didn't believe this woman when they got the letter. Nobody else is saying this. I don't think anybody's got the courage to say it because there is a narrative around Dr. Ford. And that narrative is she is unchallengeable. She must be believed. Well, they didn't believe her when they got the letter. They've now thrown and rolled the dice on Christine Ford being the weapon to get rid of Kavanaugh. If that was the case, they would have fired this weapon during regular confirmation hearings and interviews of Kavanaugh. They would have made him explain all this back then if they really thought this was sufficient to disrupt and delay and stall or maybe end his nomination. But they didn't have that much faith. And because, look, anybody with their half a brain, and some of these people still have half a brain, could look at this letter, say she doesn't know where it happened. She doesn't know when it happened. She cannot answer enough questions that would literally inspire a legitimate investigation, either by local police or the FBI or anybody else that wanted to look into it. There's nowhere to go with this investigation. She can't tell them where it happened. So how the hell do you investigate this? All the people she claims were there are denying it. And yet they keep pounding this FBI thing and how they've been wronged and they've been cheated. The Democrats, they've been shortchanged. It's nothing more than an attempt to delay and make the American people think the Republicans are cheating. Amy Klobuchar, by the way, in her little speech before the vote is taken, this was a half hour ago, Amy Klobuchar, who was part of the effort yesterday to portray Kavanaugh as a falling down drunk that can't remember where he was every day when he gets up because he got drunk the night before. She let the cat out of the bag as to what one of the things this is really all about. She essentially said that Kavanaugh's not legit because of who nominated him. Trump. Trump, a misogynist. Trump, a woman hater. Trump, a woman abuser. Trump this. Trump, who believes in expanding federal power out the wazoo. And he says, so does Kavanaugh. She said that Kavanaugh's illegitimate, not qualified simply because of who picked him. Quick timeout, my friends. Don't go away. There's always much more. Welcome back. Great to have you. I thought it was brilliant of Kavanaugh to call him out, that say this was all an operation of political hacks. And I'll never forget Durbin and Cory Booker. Are you actually saying that Christine Ford is a Democrat operative and a Democrat hack, and this is all part of it? I wish her no ill will, Senator. But you, on the other hand, Senator, he didn't say this, but this was the unspoken yet conveyed message. You are running this operation, and you are running her. She didn't want any of this, and you brought her forward. And she, for somebody who didn't want all of this, she sure seemed eager to do it at the end of the day, right? Do we even believe she didn't want to do it? Look at what they're asking us to believe here. But there is no question that this whole thing was a politically hatched idea. Everything from the, in fact, I'm not even sure that letter came in over the transom. I'm not sure that letter from her arrived without anybody's foreknowledge that it was coming. Nothing they do like this is unscripted. I know these people. So I just checked out the Senate Judiciary Committee session here before they vote. Less than an hour, supposedly. And Cory Booker, Democrat Senator Spartacus from New Jersey, is going on and on and on. This is not partisan. This is not a partisan thing, Senator. He's talking to the chairman, Grassley. It's not a partisan thing. Everything they do is politicized and partisan. It is precisely that. He talked about the heroism of Dr. Ford coming forward. Heroism? The way Dr. Ford's appearance is described, she was so helpful, they said. She was so cooperative, and she was so nice, and so thoughtful, and she admitted to being terrified. She was so terrified she didn't know what exculpatory... None of that matters. None of that matters. At the end of the day, this is about evidence. You're going to destroy somebody's life, you better have the goods, and they don't. And neither did Dr. Ford. She can't tell him where. She can't tell him when. The people she says were there all swear under oath that they were not there. And yet this goes on. And yet Booker is still trying to say that this isn't partisan. He just compared it to Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. He said that was a blemish, but even they had investigations. Even that committee took time to do the investigation. We're not even doing the investigation. We won't even call the FBI. This is driving people nuts. They had that letter in the middle of July. They could have done anything they wanted between then and now. They chose not to. When certain elements of her story were investigated, as was revealed yesterday, not a single Democrat member of the committee showed up to participate in it, because this is not about evidence. Once again, they're trying to take a Democrat activist, a professor, and turn her into an abused average American citizen and attach labels such as heroine and brave and courageous. And it all happens under the premise that her allegations are not challengeable. You cannot disagree with her. She says it happened. That's the basis under which we're operating. It happened. And if you refuse, you're the bad guy. You're the racist or bigot or sexist or whatever the Democrats want to throw out you. Dianne Feinstein had the letter from Dr. Ford. What did she do with it? She recommended Dr. Ford get a couple lawyers. Dr. Ford's lawyers, don't they cost money? Feinstein said, don't worry about that. We've got you covered. And she called a couple of Democrat activist lawyers, Katz and Bromwich, who then took the case pro bono so that Ford would not have to sell either her house in Santa Cruz or Palo Alto, or would not have to fly coach on her next trip to Hawaii. But she couldn't turn that information over to the FBI. She called a couple of hack activist lawyers and told them what happened to Ford or what Ford said happened, but she couldn't call the FBI. Dianne Feinstein. She didn't alert the rest of the committee that she had the letter. She just called a couple of lawyers. The Washington Post did not believe ballsy either. They were contacted first. She sent the letter, probably under advice of somebody, to their tip line. The Washington Post tip line. They never got back to her because they didn't believe it. And they wanted to believe anything. Now, when the Washington Post didn't believe it, it doesn't mean they didn't believe her story. What it means is the Washington Post looked at what her claim was and thought it was not useful in getting rid of Kavanaugh. That was the studied reaction by left-wing activists disguised as journalists at the Washington Post. If Dr. Ford's tip had been presented in a way that made the Washington Post think it would be useful in getting rid of Kavanaugh, then they would have scarfed it up. But they didn't. And again, not because they didn't think she wasn't credible or not because they didn't believe, just something about it, I'm convinced, did not turn them on. But they were contacted first, and it was after that, when the Washington Post didn't reply, that some, okay, well, let's go to the New York Times. They didn't call the FBI. They didn't call Montgomery County Police. They send a letter to Feinstein. Feinstein goes out, hires a couple hack lawyers who then start marshaling forces with the media. Throughout all of this, nobody calls the FBI to demand an investigation, because I'll guarantee you they didn't believe it. or it wasn't detailed enough, or it didn't have what they really wanted. And that is a way of using it to get rid of Kavanaugh. I guess the pubic hair on the Coke can version of Ford's story didn't match the intensity of the pubic hair on the Coke can in the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill story. And nobody wants to frustrate Trump and his Supreme Court nominees more than the Washington Post. Now, I guess in some ways it might take a lot of courage to accuse somebody of attempted rape and even attempted murder. She said she feared for her life at one point. It might take a lot of courage to accuse somebody of that when you don't have a shred of evidence. That would scare the hell out of me. Let's set the table here. Let's say that I am a Republican political activist. And I send a letter off to some Republican bigwigs. And they come to me and they say, okay, you say this happened to you, but you can't tell us where or when. You can't really say who, you're not for sure. Well, we want you to go before one of our committees. And we want you to testify what happened to you, even though you can't say where it happened or when. And I'm saying, yeah, you're asking me, that would take a lot of courage if you're asking me. It would take a lot of courage to go tell a story with a whole lot of holes in it. So I guess on that basis, we could grant that there was some courage involved. When you don't have a shred of evidence, not even the details of time and place, you got no witnesses, nothing. So yeah, it might take some kind of courage to try to destroy somebody without any corroboration. Might take some courage to try to join in the effort to destroy a life and a career. As was said over and over and over again yesterday, the FBI will only interview the same people who have already been interviewed. The FBI would then hand over the same interviews to the Senate. The Senate would just be back where they were before. The FBI doesn't reach conclusions, except what is it that's percolating in my memory? Oh, yeah. The FBI did reach conclusions. The FBI, I'm sorry, James Comey and Stroke Smirk and McCabe, they reached a conclusion that Hillary was innocent. But they did that before examining the evidence. They did that before even interviewing Hillary. Hillary Clinton was exonerated of all crimes before they even interviewed her about her suspicious server and trafficking in classified data and documents. So whereas the FBI might not reach conclusions, we can point to FBI leadership having done so in order to clear Hillary Clinton. But in the normal scope of things, they don't. People that have been making this claim are absolutely right. As to the political nature of this, he mentioned the name Brian Fallon to you a couple of times in the past 2 days. Brian Fallon, a spokesman for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, her failed presidential campaign. Brian Fallon is an angry, vindictive, bitter, and very sore loser. He posted what many people say look like veiled threats to Kavanaugh last night. He called Kavanaugh an attempted rapist and vowed that Judge Kavanaugh, if confirmed, will not serve for life. Currently, Brian Fallon is the executive director of something called We Demand Justice. It is a front group for another liberal big money group called the Democracy Alliance. And he tweeted, if Senate GOP ignores Dr. Ford and tries to muscle an attempted rapist onto the Supreme Court, number one, they will pay dearly this November. Number two, senators up in 2020, Collins, Gardner, et al., will feel intense heat for the next 2 years. And 3, Kavanaugh will not serve for life. This guy, Brian Fallon, has continued to post tweets since his Kavanaugh will not serve for life. That is a veiled threat. He didn't add any clarification. Will not serve for life. What's a reasonable person's initial reaction to that? I'll bet you the initial reaction is not, yeah, we're going to impeach him. If we win the House or we win the Senate, we're going to impeach him. We're going to throw him off the court. That's not what people's initial reaction is. When the social media universe sits there and sees Kavanaugh will not serve for life, they think of something a little bit more dastardly. But this is not partisan, says Cory Booker. Oh, no. It's not partisan. This is about the heroism of Dr. Ford. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Cory Booker is still talking. He's gone way beyond his limit. So I got to find out what's shaking here. Okay, Booker is running for president, Spartacus. He knows that he's got some stiff competition from Kamala Harris. Which one of them is going to behave the most psychologically disordered is going to be the order of the day. So he's decided. Cory Booker decided he can no longer be part of the process where she's not going to be believed, where women are abused routinely in this country and men don't care about it. So he respects Grassley and he respects everything, but he can't respect this process. He cannot sit there. He can't stomach this anymore with her not being believed, and he walked out of there after finishing what he said. He's campaigning for the Democrat nomination in 2020, and Kamala Harris pulled the same stunt earlier. She left. She left much sooner than Booker. Booker hung around to say something, and then he walked out. Kamala Harris walked out within 10 minutes of the proceedings beginning. In the meantime, let's get started on the phone. Susan in Massachusetts, you're first on Open Line Friday. Hi.
Hi, Rush. And first, it's an honor to speak with you. I'm a listener since 1990.
Thank you very much.
I have been watching these hearings. I watched them all day yesterday. And as a rape survivor, I just want to tell you, you don't forget 1 minute of the whole scene. You remember the color of the walls. You remember how you got home. You remember the face. You remember the music that was playing. You remember the layout of the house. You don't forget it, particularly, as she said, she had PTSD. I've been diagnosed with PTSD. You relive that every single day. You never forget it. So I don't believe one word of this woman, and I feel sorry that I have to say that because women should be believed, but this is so blatantly political and partisan, I can't stand it anymore. That's my comment.
Well, I'm glad you called. I know you wanted to get it off your chest. Look, now wait a minute. Let me just ask you something.
Yes.
Are there not some traumas that are so harrowing that victims do repress the memory and forget?
Not with PTSD. PTSD, part of the symptoms is you relive it every day, and sometimes multiple times.
A good point. She did say PTSD. PTSD, in order to have it, you have to have the memory. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you know what? Then she had more than one beer, which makes her a perjurer.
Yeah.
Okay. My question is...
Your question is?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, what's your question?
My question is can Brett Kavanaugh sue for defamation of character?
No. Well, I think it's possible. In politics, it's really difficult to do this because of the First Amendment. First Amendment really written for political speech, no limits on it whatsoever. And you can defame people in political ads, for example. People have tried to run defamation suits, but they usually end because of this thing called discovery. You have to open your life up to the competing client and lawyer. Let me tell you about some PTSD. I know a guy who had to go to drug rehab. And he told me a story about one of the things that they do in drug rehab is try to take you back to the earliest memories you have in life. that could have caused some kind of psychological disorder, which could have led to your being unable to face reality and looking for ways to numb pain and so forth. And he told me they tried to tell him, based on some stories that he described of his childhood, that he had PTSD because of the way his parents treated him. And he had never, until he had been told in drug therapy, he had never considered any of the sort of thing. But they zeroed in on his upbringing and stories he told about growing up. They turned around and said, "You have been traumatized. Your parents traumatized you." So my point is that therapists out there there's certain hot issues that go from time to time. PTSD is one, and then I'm not informed enough to know what all the different disorders are. But somebody who never thought they had PTSD, would never even occur that they had post-traumatic stress disorder, especially from the way their parents treated them, were told that they had it. Now, if you happen to be somewhat insecure, and if you happen to be looking for excuses to explain the things about yourself that you don't like, and somebody comes along and tells you you have PTSD, may be easy to believe it, and thereby have a built-in excuse for whatever is wrong with you. I just think it's interesting that somebody had never even considered it. They tried to convince him he had it, and that it was why he was behaving the way he was. Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal just asked that in good conscience, Mr. Chairman, you delay this vote. We cannot do this in the United States Senate without an FBI investigation. Please delay the vote. He's still begging. He's still axing. Greetings, my friends, and welcome back. You're tuned to the most listened to radio talk show in America, and one that is growing by leaps and bounds. Same thing with RushLimbaugh.com and subscribers, and the relatively new RushLimbaugh.com app for your iPhone, your iPad, or your Android device. Happy to have you with us on Friday, my friends.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Yes, sirree, Bob. And since I'm kind of worn out, I've decided I'm going to try to take a few more calls than usual and put the burden for carrying the program on you. Well, no, even if I wanted to coast, I can't do it. I could probably get started coasting, but then I would take over and end the coast. So we are supposedly less than a half hour away from the Senate Judiciary Committee voting Brett Kavanaugh out to a recommendation to the full Senate to be confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. It's going to be an 11-10 vote, with the announcement today by Jeff Flake and Bob Corker that they are going to vote yes on Kavanaugh. Democrats on the committee are speechifying and then walking out of the committee. The last senator to speak was Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Honestly, I understand Connecticut's a big blue state. And I understand it's overflowing with New York Times groveling and reading voters, Democrats. But this guy Blumenthal, I don't know how many people know this, and if you did know it, how many of you remembered it. Do you remember yesterday? Well, you probably don't. Blumenthal, when it was his turn to interrogate, if you will, Justice Kavanaugh came up with a Latin phrase and asked Kavanaugh if he knew what it was. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. You know, legal people like to use Latin and throw it around so that we don't know what they're talking about. It sounds sophisticated and educated, start tossing around Latin. Falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. What it means is it's a principle in trial that if a witness is shown to have lied about one thing, then you can go ahead and proceed on the basis that a witness has lied about everything. And this is why it's always dicey for lawyers to put known liars on the witness stand. This is one of the problems with having defendants testify. If there's a record of them lying, it's a legitimate question. Well, how do we know you're telling the truth now? Because I am. I'm not lying now. But you have, and so it's just an automatic strike against one's credibility. And the legal principle of falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus means if you lie about one thing, then it's perfectly acceptable and even in some cases required to believe that you would lie about everything. And I thought, what a guy to bring that up. Richard Blumenthal. Richard Blumenthal, Senator Connecticut, lied for years about serving in Vietnam. Not just serving in Vietnam, serving with great valor. He lied for years thinking that it would help his resume and that it would counter some of the beliefs that people have about left-wingers being pansies and this kind of thing. So he routinely lies, and the press doesn't challenge him on it because they don't want to challenge him on it, because they don't want to believe that he might be lying about it. If anybody came forward and said that he is lying about it, then they would defend him. Finally, the heat got so bad that he had to admit it. And to watch him trying to talk about falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus, trying to say to Kavanaugh, you lied about one thing, we can infer you're lying about everything. Same goes for you, Senator. Goose for gander, pedal calling black, everything works here. If you're going to start holding other people up to that standard, then you better look at it and have it apply to yourself. The specific translation for falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus, means somebody who would lie about his military service will lie about anything. That's how we seek to define it here. So there he is questioning Kavanaugh's honesty, and Kavanaugh's credibility and so forth. And this is the kind of thing, when people find out about it, it just rubs them raw. The other assumptions that are being made, Dr. Ford. Dr. Ford is so helpful. She was so nice, and she was so thoughtful, and she was heroic, and all of these other descriptives, but none of them mattered. It doesn't have anything to do with what was at stake yesterday, except if you're liberal Democrats, where to them the nature of the evidence is not of any relevance at all. It's the seriousness of the charge, which means that it is true. And then the same thing, I start getting irritated, so I don't watch a lot of cable news anymore. I tuned in yesterday when I got home. I wanted to watch the completion of Kavanaugh. I watched his opening statement here, then left and got home in time to see some of the Q&A. And then I turn over to the media, and the media starts analyzing what just happened. And here the guys are on CNN and MSNBC, and they're acting like everybody thinks that Kavanaugh's a lawyer. Every American thought that Dr. Ford was brilliant and a hero and so honest and so real and so caring and so thoughtful, and so it just drives me nuts that these people start assuming that every American agrees with them. And, for example, the Democrats, man, the way this poor woman has been mistreated, this is going to inspire. I thought Democrats didn't need to be inspired. I thought they were already fired up. There's more evidence. We've got a Pew Research Center poll. Republicans are just as fired up as Democrats are. Fairly close, but Republicans on balance just as fired up. There's no particular fired up advantage. that the Democrats have. In the real world, there's continued evidence. Michael Moore's movie. Wouldn't you think in an America that just can't wait to destroy Trump, just can't wait to fix its mistake of voting for Trump, realizes that they made the gravest error they've ever made, and they hate Trump now, and they're embarrassed of what they did, and they can't wait to get out there and vote Trump and the Republicans out of office in November. Wouldn't you think a deranged lunatic hate Trump movie would draw record crowds and raise record revenue? You would think that. But Michael Moore's movie is bombing everywhere. It's bombing in the case of ticket sales. It's bombing revenue-wise. At the Toronto Film Festival, it barely was voted the 8th best. That doesn't sound like blue wave stuff to me. It doesn't sound like, these people, as rabid as they are in their hatred and resentment for Trump, would go anywhere they could to get their taste and fill of it. I'll tell you what did Michael Moore in addition to the fact that I think it's way, way overblown. I don't deny that there are plenty of people who hate Trump. Don't misunderstand. Because we got more Americans than I ever thought possible with psychological disorders who are considered political activists on the left. And they're out there and they're numerous. They are not the majority of people in this country. I simply refuse to believe that a majority of our population has and is governed by psychological disorders, that psychological disorders determine their politics. I refuse to believe that. Not a majority. But here's the problem with Moore. He goes out there, produces his anti-Trump movie. He forgets that audiences don't have to pay any money to see it. All they have to do is turn on CNN. All they have to do is turn on PMS, NBC. All they have to do is read the Washington Post, the New York Times. Why go to a movie and why pay whatever it costs to go see a movie where you can see the same thing every night, every day, over and over again for absolutely zilch? So Moore's sense of timing, his sense of where the public is, the belief that the country hates Trump, everywhere you see this, everywhere you see leftists trying to make money or raise money on the basis of Trump hatred, they lost a special election in Texas that the Democrats had carried the district for something like 139 years. In Texas, in the middle of what's supposed to be a blue wave. Anyway, let me take a commercial break here. We'll come back and we'll go to the phones because a lot of people have been pent up and are waiting here for quite a while, and there's been a lot of that all week. So we'll do that and be back and continue right after this here on the EIB network. And we're still monitoring here. It looks like a lot of senators have left the committee hearing room, both parties. The vote scheduled for 1:30. I'll see what's happening here. Report back when I get back. Okay, we're going to get to the phones, but I saw something here in the break, and I got to comment on it. So some really near hysterical Democrat congresswoman during the break going nuts. Why won't we take Dr. Ford seriously? Why do we disrespect Dr. Ford? What does that mean? On the left, what does take her serious? Who did not take her seriously? Everybody bent over back. In fact, everybody treated her like she was so fragile that she might crack and break at the slightest little raised voice. Everybody was treating her with kid glove. What do you mean? Take her serious. Well, I know what they mean. I'm asking the question rhetorically. What they mean is, why don't you believe her? Well, the answer is because she doesn't have any evidence and there's no corroboration for it. That's why. Well, that's not fair. She's come forward at great risk and using great courage. Why won't you take her seriously? Everybody did take her seriously. She was given every opportunity in the book. And then this congresswoman said, why won't Grassley and the Republicans open an FBI investigation. Why are they so reluctant? It's because they're afraid the FBI is going to find something that disproves what they believe. If you're Kavanaugh, and if you're really innocent, why not do it? Why not have it really proclaimed you're innocent? Because you don't need to, but that's not the reason. And they don't want to say it. I'll say it. The reason they're not calling the FBI in is because you people are doing nothing but trying to delay this. And they're not going to fall for your trick. Now, for some reason, Grassley and the guy, other than Graham's the only one that pointed at him and told him what they're going to do, called him out on it, didn't faze him. Didn't faze him a bit. He nailed him to the wall. He told him exactly what they're doing and why it isn't going to work and how unfair it is. This ongoing whining and moaning about the FBI is nothing more than an attempt to delay. And after that, it's designed to put a cloud of doubt over Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh didn't want the FBI. The Republicans didn't want the FBI examining what went on here. If you're really innocent, why wouldn't you want an investigation? There's been an investigation, 6 FBI background checks of the guy. If we know already that he's really innocent and Dr. Ford can't prove what she's saying, then what is the point? This, I'm telling you, this frustrates people. I'm getting more email about this. The Democrats do not know what they're doing with this FBI garbage. They are irritating people far more than they are buttressing their forces on the left. Let's go back to the phones as promised. Worcester, Massachusetts. Steve, you're next. Hello, sir.
Hello, wicked mega dittos, Rush. I'm calling from behind enemy lines here. My feet, and this is one of the highlights of my life talking to you.
Thank you.
I'm just part of the silent majority, never having my voice heard anywhere up here, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to converse with you. But what I'm calling about is why I'm not hearing the Republicans make an issue of how Dr. Ford deleted all her social media before her testifying, bringing it to public knowledge. I would consider that destruction of evidence.
Because they were treating her seriously. They were taking Dr. It's a good question. Nobody did bring it up. She did. She had, I don't even know if she did it or somebody did it. Some of the activists working for her did it. Democrats probably did. They scrubbed her social media the minute she was identified. I mean, within, a half a day of her being identified, they scrubbed her social media. They got it. They deleted it. They erased it. And they didn't bring it up yesterday because they knew she had no evidence. She didn't bring anything new. She brought no corroboration. Nothing. All she brought was her heroism and her caring and her truth. Yeah, that was a favorite word Democrats would pay. She came with her truth. No, she came with her version. We didn't get to the truth yesterday. What we got to was she couldn't prove what she was alleging. And the people she named, the people she named claimed they weren't there. The Democrats say, but they didn't say that to the FBI. They said it in a sworn affidavit, and sworn affidavits are not enough. Sworn affidavits are never enough. Oh, really? Well, they clearly were plenty to try to nail Trump. Sworn affidavits left and right to try to go get FISA warrants to spy on Trump. Sworn affidavit here, people claiming under penalty of felony, meaning they know that they're committing a felony by lying. If they get caught, it's jail time. They sign the affidavits anyway. She had no evidence. So the Republicans, really, she was treated like a fragile teenager. One gust of wind could have ruined her day. That's why. Michael in Sterling, Virginia, you are next on the EIB network. Hello.
Hey, Rush. How are you? Recent Harvard grad. Always nice to break out of the echo chamber with you.
Well, a recent Harvard grad.
Yes, yeah, and I have some friends back there. People are apparently losing their minds right now in some of the predictable ways. But the question I wanted to ask you, Rush, is, look, obviously this whole hearing is playing into the popular narrative of Republicans equal anti-woman party. I can't help but wonder if and when there will be a tipping point that with these miscarriages of justice, ultimately the narrative shifts to Democrats becoming the anti-man party. Do you think that will happen? And if so, are we there now, or when does it happen?
We're not there now, but that's a good question. I don't know how likely it is, but I've already seen in a number of places that I scour on a daily basis in show prep, and I've had emails from people I know, and the reaction I'm getting from a lot of mothers who have sons is that they're scared to death. They're scared to death what they see being done to men here. And Kavanaugh is a choir boy. Kavanaugh is a choir boy. They're trying to turn a choir boy into a serial rapist who deserves to be behind bars. And then whatever happens to him there, he deserves. Now, if you're an average, ordinary American mom and you have a couple of sons or a son, and you're about ready to send them off to where liberals run things like at universities and colleges, and you can already see what's happening with the snowflake movement, the social justice warriors, with white privilege, white males being the reason for all the problems in America. I'm seeing, and it's all anecdotal, and by that I mean I haven't seen anything scientific in terms of polling data. I'm just aware that, and it's not reported in the media, this would be one of these things, like in the 2002 midterms, the Republicans ended up winning. In the aftermath, they asked people, what was the reason for your vote? And they said values. And nobody thought values were a part of the 2002 midterm campaign. It's midterm House races. What do you mean values? It was the Wellstone Memorial. They watched that and they were appalled by the values they saw there. Values voters came out and won a Republican majority in an off-year election after Bush's first term. It's unheard of. And nobody saw it coming. We could be at the beginning of something similar to that with the way boys are being treated. They've got moms, too. CNN is breathlessly reporting that Jeff Flake, who announced he was going to vote for Kavanaugh this morning, walked out of the committee room today with Chris Coons, Democrat from Delaware, and hasn't been seen since. And so CNN is trying to say that there's a lot of drama being played out behind the scenes, and it maybe Flake is going to get his mind changed by the Democrats. CNN claiming Flake is wobbling, might still vote no. That's the current holdup in the voting right now. I just ran into this story. It's from our buddies at Newsbusters. Feminist author Jill Filipovic is demanding that women divorce their Republican husbands. Feminist author Jill Filipovic tweeted instructions to her fellow scorned women on how to get back at the man. Divorce your Republican husbands. This is why I say, ladies and gentlemen, that I think a lot of political activists are actually victims of psychological issues and are projecting it onto the world of politics. I really do. I think this is the way to explain much of liberalism, that they have victimized so many people, made them think they're victims. That means they're helpless. Things are hopeless. Everything's stacked against them. Whatever's wrong in their lives is somebody else's fault. The Democrat Party has lassoed all these people and has promised to fix things for them by getting even with the people who are responsible for mistreating them, which happens to be white male Republicans. This is so deranged. Divorce your Republican. She's serious. Divorce your Republican husbands. That's how we get back at what the Republicans are doing to Dr. Ford. You get even with, you divorce your Republican husband. She's serious about it. She's tweeting it out there. People are treating it seriously. This is deranged. This is a psychological disorder of some merit, some degree. You read something like this, you can't help but laugh at it. And then you realize they're serious. get even with the Republicans for what they've done to Dr. Ford by divorcing your Republican husband and take him for all he's worth. Now, somebody tell me that that's rational. Tell me that it's a rational way to think, that it's a rational solution to a problem. None of it is rational. But it makes perfect sense if you look at these people, rather than being political activists, that they are first people with psychological disorders who have found their way into the political system and been validated. Their psychological disorder, their mess, whatever it is, has been validated by the Democrat Party, which then goes and makes policy based on all of this. And then they find it finds its way into the curriculum at universities in the form of women's studies curricula and other such things. We are keeping an eye on the committee. They're not voted yet, supposed to vote soon. Still some concern over where is Jeff Flake. CNN is breathless. CNN is, they're so hoping that somebody got to Flake. We are, of course, hoping that it's wishful thinking. In the event somebody did. And by the way, I told the people on the other side of the glass 45 minutes ago that I'm not thinking this is over at all. I'm listening to these Democrat speeches where they're still campaigning, and then they get up and walk out, and every one of them is looking right at where Flake is sitting, either he or in Grassley's direction. And I told them in there, and they can back this up, that I wouldn't be surprised if one of two things happened. If Grassley did decide to delay the vote or if Flake changed his mind. And Snerdley looked, no way, not after you commit, no way. And now look what CNN's reporting. I know it's CNN, but somebody's telling them that. And it could all be bogus, designed to be seen by others. Right. Talks going on behind the scenes, drama playing out behind the scenes, Dem GOP members in talks. What could that be about? That can only if the Dems and the Republicans are in talks. The only reason to be talking would be to change what was supposed to happen here at 1:30. Let's go back to the phone. Stephanie in Savannah, Georgia. You're next. It's great to have you here.
Hi, good to talk to you. I was calling just as a mom of 3 young boys, 4 years and under. This case has really gotten my attention. Right now I'm just trying to keep them from burping at the table and just to use their inside voices. But I know as they get older, my husband and I are going to be teaching them to be gentlemen and to be honest and have good character, and in our house to be godly men. And so just watching yesterday, and I missed some, not a lot, but I have 3 little ones, so I missed a little bit. But just watching was so discouraging because it breaks my heart that for my boys, even if they do live an upstanding life, that because they're males, they can be brought down and their lives can be ruined if just one female brings an accusation against them because they're a female. They deserve to be believed, apparently. So I just felt bad for Judge Kavanaugh's parents and for his mom sitting there and having to listen to her son defend himself and defend his character and have to prove to the whole nation that he's not a sexual predator. And so it just breaks my heart for her. It breaks my heart that nobody has the backs of our boys anymore.
No, they don't. No, they don't. Not right now. It's become fashionable even for Republicans to accept the idea that there is wanton male abuse out there because everybody wants the women's vote, just like it was fashionable to agree with the concept of amnesty because everybody wants the Latino or Hispanic vote. Look, you're one of many mothers from whom I've heard with the same concerns. One thing about thanks, Stephanie. One thing about this committee vote, even if they turn Flake, it doesn't mean that the vote of the full Senate is canceled. I guess it could, but Clarence Thomas came out of the Judiciary Committee with a 7-7 vote. It was a tie. And he was nevertheless confirmed when the pedal hit the metal, when the rubber hit the road. Don't know if that'd be the case here. I'll tell you one thing. When I expected to tune in at 9:30 today and see the vote, and then I saw Grassley agree to let the Democrats have a go-around at this that would take 4 hours, that pushed the vote back to 1:30. So why? We did all this yesterday. Why is any more time necessary? But they wanted to go on the record, and Grassley wanted to be cooperative. If the vote would have happened at 9:30, some Democrats might have walked out, but so what? Anyway, that's wishful thinking because it didn't happen. And we are still tracking this down. Anyway, here's Carlos, Port St. Lucie in Florida. Great to have you, sir. Hi.
Hey, Rush. It's a pleasure, and I apologize if my phone sounds crappy. I got an iPod. I'm sorry about that. I am a minority who was a Democrat up in New York. I moved to Florida, became a Republican. I guess because a lot of the Cubans and Venezuelan people convinced me the right way over here. The Hispanics on here convinced me. This reminds me, when I was in New York, of the Tawana Brawley situation, where she put her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and indicated that 7 police officers raped her and they put ecrements on her face, and I think one of the police officers even committed suicide and lost his wife and his house, and I mean, destroyed a lot of lives up there. And this reminds me of that. What is your opinion?
Well, it's a good reminder. Tawana Brawley was one of the first hoaxes run by Al Sharpton on which he was caught. He'd run many hoaxes prior to that. This one he got caught. Totally exposed as fraudulent. Tawana Brawley was not raped. She was being hidden by the Reverend Sharpton. But you've got the story right. Raped by 7 cops. Supposedly they rubbed excrement all over her. Deeply humiliating experience and so forth. There were lawsuits and a number of things after the fact. I remember being way back when on, what was it? Some cable network. I forget, it was over in New Jersey. Might have been something in the CNBC or the early versions of MSNBC. I was on one night with Al Sharpton, and he was jovial, and he knew who I was, obviously. And I think Ollie North was the host. It's either Ollie North or Al Joker. Don't remember which. And I looked at Reverend Sharpton and said, I honestly don't understand how you have any credibility. And he was totally taken aback. Totally. He stopped in his track. What do you mean? I said, Tawana Brawley, how do you have any credibility within the black community? I don't understand it. Well, all hell broke loose. And ever since then, Reverend Sharpton has not liked me so much. But you're exactly right. Now, okay, Grassley is leaving the room at the moment here, so all I can do is react to pictures that we have on TV. I appreciate the call, Carlos. A brief timeout. We'll be back with much more right after this. Yeah, all right. It's confirmed the Democrats are really putting pressure on Flake. I was wise to not trust this at the get-go. I didn't say, there's a lot of things I'm holding back today, folks. I want to tell you up front, I'm holding back because I don't want to end up being a factor in what's happening here today. And I don't mean to sound egotistical, but there are certain things that if in this charged atmosphere, they're just waiting for people like me to say something that they can turn into a news story that would fire people up. So I have withheld what have been fears all day long about Flake. The minute I got here and found out this vote was going to take 4 hours we'll have 4 hours of debate prior to it instead of happening at 9:30, and knowing that Flake is leaving, this is his last term in office, knowing that Flake is, at the end of the day, still does not like Donald Trump at all. Kavanaugh is a Trump nominee. The Democrats are now working hard to change him, and I'll guarantee you, they're not talking about FBI investigations or fairness or any of that. They're talking Trump. Amy Klobuchar set that up by saying that she doesn't think Kavanaugh's qualified or legitimate simply because Trump nominated him. I think they're probably talking about Senator McCain to him. You can be a hero like Senator McCain. Remember Senator McCain thumbing down Obamacare, the repeal of Obama? You can do the same. I know they're working on him this way. And this was a fear I had from the get-go today, I mean, even from last night. I mean, we're talking about Jeff Flake here. And maybe even a little bit Corker. Now, all of that having been said, McConnell has said that regardless, there's going to be a floor vote next week. And here's another thing. Traditionally, the vote in the Judiciary Committee is supposed to serve as a guide to the full Senate. See, the full Senate's not on the Judiciary Committee, and so Civics 101 says that the rest of the Senate will learn what to do by listening to the learned knowledge and recommendation of the Judiciary Committee, which will have fully vetted the nominee, blah, 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 blah. I guarantee you that the other senators are not sitting out there waiting to hear what the Judiciary Committee recommends with its vote. So McConnell says there's going to be a vote regardless. Flake's vote, somebody is going to be needed. If Flake drops off, we're going to need Collins, Murkowski, so forth. McConnell says the vote is going to happen. In fact, our microphones are still there. Let's jip a little bit of this. Grassley just resumed his seat here. Let's see what's happening. We have a few moments here to
speaking with a number of people on the other side. We've had conversations ongoing for a while with regard to making sure that we do due diligence here.
Jeff Flake
and I think it would be proper to delay the floor vote for up to but not more than 1 week in order to let the FBI continue to do an investigation limited in time and scope to the current allegations that are there, and limited in time to no more than 1 week. And I will vote to advance the bill to the floor with that understanding. And I've spoken to a few other members who on my side of the aisle that may be supportive as well. But that's my position. I think that we ought to do what we can to make sure that we do all due diligence with a nomination this important. And I want to say that this committee has acted properly, and the chairman has bent over backwards to do investigations from this committee and to delay this vote in this committee for a week so that that Ms. Ford, Dr. Ford, could be heard, and she was yesterday. So that's with that agreement. I will vote to advance the bill to the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Just 1 second. Pot it down. What Flake is saying here, he's prepared to vote for Kavanaugh in this vote, but he wants to delay for a week on the full Senate vote so that the FBI can investigate. I still don't believe that that's how they got to him. I think they got to him with Trump. But they could have gotten to him with this FBI business. We got a few seconds here. He's still speaking. Let's see. Maybe we can grasp
my understanding, and if the Democrats could speak to it, if Chris or you, as we talked about before, that the Democrats would accept and endorse a 1 week FBI investigation limited in time and scope.
Well,
that is correct.
Since you're the deciding vote here, we'll vote, and then if there's any sort of discussion, we'll go do that after the vote. Call the roll.
Mr. Hatch. Aye. Mr. Graham. Aye. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee. Aye. Mr. Cruz.
They're calling the vote. They're calling the vote without a commitment to do the FBI investigation. Grassley.
Mr. Tillis.
Grassley manned up here.
Aye. Mrs. Feinstein.
Yeah.
On the nominee, no. Mr. Leahy.
On the nominee, no.
Mr. Durbin. No. Mr. Whitehouse.
Our seconds are dwindling. We're hoping to get all this in before we have to go, folks.
On the nominee, no.
Mr. Blumenthal.
No.
Ms. Hirono. No. Mr. Hooker.
No.
Ms. Harris. No. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, the votes are 11 days, 10 days.
The nominee will be reported to the floor.
Mr. Chairman, may I recognize?
Gotta go. Take it away. Okay, the Senate Judiciary Committee has voted to send the Kavanaugh nomination to the floor, 11 to 10. Flake's vote is contingent in the full vote on whether or not they delay that full vote for an FBI investigation. And that now is not up to this committee. That's up to the turtle. That's up to McConnell as to when the vote takes place. All the rest in there right now, just noise. Okay, the ball is in Donald Trump's court now. We'll see how he deals with this. Just hang on, folks. I'm going to tell you what happened and put it all in perspective for you.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program in our final hour. It's easy for me to say now, but Snerdley can back me up. I had fears this was going to happen from the moment I showed up here because we're talking about Jeff Flake. I didn't say so because I didn't want it reported in the media that Rush Limbaugh worried about Flake. I didn't want to put the idea out there. I'm also not saying some things about the hearings yesterday because I don't want what I say to end up being a distraction. There's liberal media's out there waiting for any of that. So I'm kind of holding back here. And don't worry, you're going to hear what I think at some point. But I got to be strategic here given all this going on. So here's where we are. The vote was supposed to be at 9:30 today. The Democrats in the committee asked for a chance to speak before they voted. They began to filibuster. The vote was then announced when Grassley decided to let that happen. He had to let it happen for everybody. So the Democrats, especially Cory Booker, just started flapping their gums, just started talking about meaningless garbage to make it sound like it was meaningful, but it wasn't. It was just time-filling and time-wasting, and the vote was moved back to 1:30. As we approached 1:30, people noticed that Chris Coons and Jeff Flake had left the committee room some moments earlier, and nobody had seen them since. This, of course, made people curious, and they found out that eventually Coons and Flake had been huddling, and the Democrats have been working on Flake to agree with them that the FBI needs to take one more look at this, given Ballsy Ford's testimony now, and given the other allegations, the porn star lawyer's allegation from what's-her-face? No. Who's Avenatti's client? I'm having a middle block on her name. And Ramirez, Wetnick, whatever it is. And so the Democrats have been pushing for an FBI investigation just to delay things. The FBI, here's what's silly about this, folks. The only thing the FBI would do, if they're authorized to do it, is what they've already done. The FBI has already said there's nothing here. This is so, I overused the word maddening. Well, anyway, jump on the shark here. Let me come back and get back into the chronology of this. So Flake comes back in with Coons, huddles with Grassley, and the upshot of it is that Flake says he will vote for Kavanaugh if there will be a delay in the full Senate, the floor vote on Kavanaugh for a week, so that the FBI could investigate, which is what the Democrats have been demanding and begging for. So they got to Flake somehow. We'll find out in due course what they promised him or how they got to him. That'll eventually reveal itself. So Flake makes his demand of a 1-week delay for the FBI, just so we can all be thorough here and remove any clouds of doubt, in exchange for there being a 1-week investigation. Well, Grassley, just to cut to the chase here, immediately calls the vote without telling Flake whether he accepts Flake's demand. They do the vote, and Flake votes for Kavanaugh. So the vote goes out of the committee 11-10 in favor of Kavanaugh, which doesn't mean anything in terms of the final vote. Don't doubt me. It doesn't mean anything. It used to maybe carry some weight, but it doesn't anymore. What Flake then said is, yeah, I voted yes today, but my yes vote on final confirmation of Kavanaugh will not be forthcoming unless there is a 1-week FBI investigation. So he's holding his vote, and he's telling everybody he might not vote Kavanaugh if there is no FBI investigation. Well, the problem with all of this is that nobody in that room, in the Senate Judiciary Committee room, can authorize an FBI investigation. Nobody can make that deal with Flake. Grassley can't make that deal because Grassley doesn't run the Senate. Mitch McConnell does. As the majority leader, Mitch McConnell runs the Senate. Mitch McConnell is on record saying there will be a vote next Tuesday on Kavanaugh. Now, that was before Flake pulled this stunt today, agreeing with the Democrats that his vote is contingent on a 1 week, maximum 1 week FBI investigation into only allegations we have at the moment, which would mean Balsey Ford, Ramirez, and Swetnick. But nobody in that room can make this deal. Chuck Schumer, as the minority leader, has to negotiate with McConnell on whether or not there's going to be an FBI investigation before the floor vote. Now, McConnell, let's go through the possibilities. McConnell could say, I don't care about Jeff Flake's vote. We're not doing an FBI investigation. Then Schumer could say, well, then my guys are not going to show up and vote. You know, we're going to walk out. If you don't get it, we're not going to vote, neither is Flake. To which McConnell would say, if you don't want to vote, we don't need your vote, but we're going to have the vote. They can't filibuster it. They can't nuclear option it. They've blown that. The Democrats can't. But getting into what the FBI would do, here's the thing. Do you realize, folks, none of these people have to talk to the FBI in this circumstance. A 1 week delay is nothing but silly. It is the Democrats. It's the Democrats' latest victory in delaying the final vote. They're going to keep trying to delay and delay until after the midterm elections. That is all this is about because they think they're going to win them. At which point, Trump's nominees go sideways and there will never be a vote on Kavanaugh and Trump will have to pull it because it just won't be the case. They're going to run the show, House and Senate. Trump's nominees go nowhere. The only thing the FBI would do is go out and interview a few witnesses. They might interview Mark Judge, for example. But those people do not have to talk to the FBI. They may not want to. And they do not have to. Do not doubt me. None of the people that the Democrats want the FBI to talk to are under any kind of compulsion to talk to the FBI. They do not have to. Meanwhile, the most the FBI would do is interview these people and then turn the interview notes they're called 302s. There's a form 302 for an FBI interview. The 302s would then be turned over to the Senate, and the Senate would be right back where it is today, making the decision. The FBI being involved is a nothing burger. It is unnecessary. It's not going to be determinative at all. And I'll tell you something else. I'm just going to go on record here as telling you something else. If the FBI investigating this finds out that Dr. Ford is lying, the Democrats will still not change their vote. If the FBI were to find that Avenatti's client is full of it, if the FBI were to find that this Ramirez woman, who's the second woman to come forth after Dr. Balsey Ford, if the FBI finds that not only are these witnesses lying, but there is nothing to what they're saying, and if that's what they report, well, they wouldn't report it. The Senate would. They would get the interviews, and if in the interviews the FBI finds out that Balsey Ford is lying, this is just a possibility here, hypothetical. My point is, this is so irrelevant and so undeterminative and so not really necessary that no matter what the FBI finds, the Democrats are not going to change their vote. Right now, the Democrats are operating on the premise that Balsey Ford cannot lie. She's a woman. She's making the allegation. It's true. We must take her seriously. And taking her seriously means believing her. If we don't believe her, we're insulting her. If we don't believe her, we're not taking her seriously. So the FBI goes and talks to her. She can't tell them where it happened. If she now tells them where it happened, then they've got a problem because she's under oath said she doesn't know where it happened. If she suddenly remembers, we got a problem. If she suddenly remembers when it happened, specific date and time, we have a problem because she's under oath saying she doesn't remember that. So they go interview her. She says the same thing to the FBI she said yesterday. Nobody knows any more than they know today. The FBI will furnish their 302s and reports. They will add no new information to anything because all of this already has been investigated by committee investigators. If there are no changes, if there is no corroborating evidence, if the 4 people named by Ballsy Ford who claim today under oath that they do not know what she's talking about, that they weren't there, if they say that to the FBI, will the Democrats accept it because it's coming from the FBI? No. I'm here to tell you that there is no circumstance under which the Democrats are going to change their vote on this guy. Some of the red state Democrats might, like Joe Manchin and some of the others that are maybe feeling some heat in the midterms. But the Democrats at large, as a party, are not going to change their votes on this. And the reason I'm saying that is to point out the futility and the utter irrelevance of this, and cement the point that it is nothing more than another delay. And Trump, Jeff Flake does not get to authorize the FBI. The only thing at stake here is Jeff Flake's vote. Flake voted for Kavanaugh in the committee on the basis that there's going to be an FBI investigation of a week. If that investigation doesn't happen, then Flake can say, okay, I'm not voting for the guy. But Flake cannot authorize the FBI, and Grassley can't authorize the FBI, and Dianne Feinstein can't authorize the FBI. And the FBI's already said they don't want any part of it. The FBI's already said to them it's a closed case. It's not in their jurisdiction. There hasn't been a formal complaint filed where it happened in Montgomery County. It's 36 years old. The American people ought to be outraged at the Democrat Party. The American people ought to be fit to be tied and frustrated as hell over the Democrat Party thwarting the process here, because that is all this is. Well, it's not all it is. In addition to all of that, it is the purposeful, and I mean that, it is the purposeful destruction of a man and his career, his achievements, his integrity, his reputation, his family, and his life in general. That is also on the table as a threat to anybody else who might come along and threaten the Supreme Court as somebody like Judge Kavanaugh does. Now, a quick timeout. We'll get to your phone calls when we get back. Hang on. A friend of mine, known affectionately as Mr. Hawaii, just sent me a text and said, what is the purpose of the delay? Well, let me tell you what the purpose of the delay is. I just watched Chris Coons, who made the deal with Flake, say, look, we need to remove the cloud over the head of Judge Kavanaugh. And I think everyone agrees that the FBI looking into this or any new allegations in the next week is something that should be a bipartisan effort because this committee was too partisan. The American people need to see us working together. So we have a 1 week delay that the Democrats now say maximum, we'll agree, 1 week delay. FBI come in, look at this. But Coons also said any new allegations that come in, they of course should be investigated. The reason for the delay is for new allegations to be brought forth. And I'm telling you, the Democrats already have them in their back pockets, like cards waiting to be played. The reason for the delay is to get another delay. And after securing that next delay, go for another one. All of this is about one of two things: delaying the vote or having it canceled before the elections in November, or having the president withdraw Kavanaugh or Kavanaugh withdraw himself. Those are the objectives. Anything to prevent the vote. Anything. That's what the delay is. The delay is the next phase in new allegations. But, Rush, they just agreed to one. Folks, wait. It's Monday, next week, hypothetical. And everybody thinks the FBI is looking into Ballsy Ford and somebody said that. And then, why, lo and behold, here comes another Democrat lawyer with another allegation. Do you think the Democrats can say, well, we can't investigate that because we agreed to end all this on Friday? Ha! If there's a new allegation, it will be met with a demand to extend the investigation. We said it from the beginning of this process. Every day the Republicans do not call the vote on this is every day there isn't going to be one. And it's now getting to the point every day that the vote is not called equals 4 or 5 days of delay. So now the ball is in the court of the turtle, Mitch McConnell. By the way, Trump, apparently they got a press gaggle in there at the White House. Do you hear what Trump said? Well, if that's what they want, let it play out. I didn't see it. That is a report that I got. I guess I should say this with an asterisk. I have learned, unless I see it myself, that I should pass it along to you with reservation. There's a lot of people think they hear something, but when I look at it, I don't hear what they've heard. So